Let me introduce you to this astounding panel of global educators. We have Martha Thorne, the Dean IE School of Architecture and Design, Madrid. Martha is the executive director of the Pritzker Architecture Prize from 2005 to 2021. She was a curator in the Department of Architecture at the Art Institute of Chicago from 1995 to 2005. Her main interests center on the contemporary city and how architecture, design, and urbanism can contribute to sustainability and resilience to be more relevant for today's challenges. Ms. Martha is also a part of the ADM Summit Advisory Board. It's a pleasure to have you on board, ma'am. Next, we have Mahesh Daas, DPACSA President, ACSA Distinguished Professor at the Boston Architectural College. Daas is the 8th president of the Boston Architectural College. He is a designer, a technologist, experienced academic leader. His career spans 23 years at 4 universities, including 14 years in higher education leadership roles. Previously, Daas served as a dean of the School of Architecture and Design at the University of Kansas, Lawrence. Gita Balakrishnan, founder and curator, Ethos, Kolkata, a graduate from the SPA Delhi. Gita Balakrishnan launched ACE Edge in 2018, an online learning initiative. Gita is the immediate past chairperson of the West Bengal chapter of the Indian Institute of Architects, and has been awarded the IIA Outstanding Member Award and Presidential Trophy for Outstanding Contribution to IIA. She was on the short list of the top 25 people in Kolkata in the Lead India campaign by the Times of India group. Gita ma'am is also the ADM Advisory Board member. We also have Rajiv Mishra, principal of Sir JJ School of JJ College of Architecture, Mumbai. An architect and urban planner. Mishra sir has been the principal since 2008 and is the director at Directorate of Art, Government of Maharashtra. Mr. Rajiv has been passionate about sensitizing young minds to think about innovative ideas to lead towards diverse possibilities. He took up teaching as a first choice at an early age to act as an agent of change for architecture education. The session is going to be moderated by none other than Tanuja Kanvinde, who's partner at Kanvinde, Rai and Chowdhury, Delhi. She's the president-elect of the Institute of Indian Interior Designers for the term 2019 and 2021. A fellow of the Indian Institute of Architects, Tanuja has been actively involved in academics as a visiting professor at the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, for over 2 decades, and she has been on the advisory board of Pearl Academy, Sushant School of Design. Currently is an international advisor for the Jindal School of Design. Tanuja ma'am is also the ADM advisory board members, and I'm going to request Ms. Tanuja to take the discussion forward from here. Over to you, Tanuja ma'am.
Afternoon. It was so delightful to be actually listening to the conversation, which, like Habib mentioned, wouldn't have been possible had it not been for the digital platform. Afternoon to Gita, professors, Martha, Mahesh, Rajiv, and all the attendees. I know it's an afternoon, but the discussion has been so wonderful that I'm sure that all of you who are logged in are quite excited to take the discussion forward, because really it is a continuation of what we've heard for the last hour. We've been kind of going through the last 20 months, have challenged us in more ways than one. We've been shaken out of our comfort zones, and we've had to look at things very differently. What we took for granted is no longer available, and we need to reinterpret the way we look at everything. It has also kind of acutely made us very aware of the fragility and the opportunities that the world we live in offers. This has pushed us for more innovative ways of functioning. The environment and the habitats that we inhabit have to be stable, sustainable, and adaptable for the changing, unpredictable scenarios. Climate change, the rapid urbanization, natural disasters. To this end, architects and designers play a very defining role. This has thrown new challenges to students, practitioners, academia, with each of us having to redefine ourselves and be more resilient. The panelists in this session are engaged with many out-of-the-box thinking, teaching methodologies over many years. Let's start with the models that each of the panelists have been engaged with. So the format I'm going to follow is, initially we will be having the panelists talk a little bit in detail about the institutes they engaged with and their personal engagement in the field of education. And then we will have rapid question answer kind of sessions, which actually unravels the different thinking and beliefs that we have and the way we look forward to what education should be, and with a little greater emphasis on what we need to have in our country in particular. Martha, as Dean of IE School of Architecture and Design, please share how technological advancement has impacted both pedagogy as well as practice. Given the global profile of students that you have, I would like you to share the ways that you kind of deal with this nuance.
Thank you so much, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. I hope you can hear me and that the connection is good. I feel very close to you, although we have so many miles between us. IE School of Architecture and Design does use technology. We are trying to respond to a changing world. And we are one of 5 schools that comprise IE University. We're based in Madrid and Segovia, Spain. But you're right, we are kind of a unique school. It is, we are the daughter of a business school. The university was created in 2007, but the business school was created 50 years ago. We are private, secular, international, and the ideals that we're based on are innovation, transdisciplinarity, and the values of humanities. We offer undergraduate, fully accredited programs in architecture design. We also offer master's programs for professional practice, master in architecture, and post-professional in real estate development and the city, strategic interior design, and the business of architecture and design. So we're always trying to see architecture design at the center, but extend our arms to other disciplines in schools. Now, technology is important because the business school began online or blended teaching about 20 years ago. So they, with an international audience, they realized that not everyone could travel or wanted to travel. So they tried to institute a more flexible way of teaching. And this has evolved over the years. We all know early forays into online teaching were sort of talking heads. It has become much more interactive with many different technological platforms, but even more important is the training of our faculty members. We encourage experimentation. We give many classes and sessions to help them develop their curriculum in a much more interactive way with different, not always a lecture, but many, many other ways. So with COVID, we have not lost a beat. When we were confined, we transitioned quickly. And then when we were allowed to go back to the classroom, we doubled the sessions to provide for the social distancing that was necessary, and had hybrid classes where those who could not travel were connected, and then those who could be together were in the classroom. And one thing about this that I saw, which was really amazing, is that often the students were the leaders in experimenting with new platforms. Young people know technology, they use it in a seamless way. And some of the best ideas came from our students. I think the other way that technology helps us is we have a process or a belief in learning by doing. This allows us to connect to our communities, to the industries around us, and to try to tackle challenges that maybe they are facing or we are facing, but doing it through, again, using technology for communication, using it for experimentation, and using it for creation in our fab labs. For us, tools of architecture go from the pencil, the hammer, the screwdriver, right up into the most complicated robotic arms, CNC machines, and things like that. So technology does help us. We connect around the world. Our student body is international. And I think, although English is our common language, I would have to say today, technology is also our common language because the students are clearly the leaders. I will stop there and thank you again for allowing me to be part of this, and I'll wait for the rapid fire questions in a moment.
Going from the youngest school to a slightly older, Mahesh, as the president of Boston Architectural College, a 130-year-old institute, would you like to share some of the initiatives that you've taken at the institute to redefine the education model? And also, how has AI and robotics impacted the architectural education? And your ways of actually dealing with the diversity of the student profile.
Thank you, Tanuja, and a very good day to you all. It's very early here in Boston, and it is absolutely an honor to share the screen with my distinguished colleagues here. Each and every one of you I know and I respect. So thank you for having me here, and thank you to Animation Express for putting this together. So Apurva in particular, thank you for bringing us together. Let me say that Boston Architectural College, as Tanuja has just pointed out, is 130 years old. So Eiffel Tower and Boston Architectural College came into existence at the same time. And it came into existence to fill a gap in the world of architectural education at that time, and continues to be so, where there was no access to professional education in the US at the time. And so it started as Boston Architectural Club, where people could get together and talk about and learn things about architecture and design. So that is how it was founded, but it evolved over these 130 years, 131 now. And the educational model continues to be very unique. We call it the concurrent education model, where the students learn from academic setting as well as practice setting concurrently. So it is not like they take a break and go work and come back. It is not like they're immersed, in academia and then go after they finish the degree. They do it every day, and that is a very unique model. That's because the Boston Architectural College is what I described when I came to the college 2.5 years ago. I really found it very curious. The structure of the college is like a banyan tree. It truly is like a banyan tree. It's not like an ivory tower or a tree with, I don't know what else, a palm tree perhaps, but it's like a banyan tree, where the college spreads its canopy by dropping these aerial roots, and then they become tap roots, and now it is a global banyan tree. And the professionals who are in firms, who employ our students and teach our students, and we evaluate their work on a regular basis, they are our partners. So we provide education, learning opportunity in practice and academic settings through those partnerships. So for example, we have this past year 81 employers who have employed our students. in that particular endeavor all over the world, around the world. And also we have, it's a very innovative institution. We're the first, definitely in the country and maybe in the world, to start an accredited online architecture degree. That was 16 years ago. And that is the largest program. And our Master of Architecture, for instance, is the 9th largest program in the country. So that modality has helped us, and that spirit of innovation has helped us. And in some sense, it is like a very large Gurukula, if you will, because it's a community that where you learn from each other, as well as in a traditional mode and traditional setting. So that is unique feature of the Boston Architectural College. Another is that 27% of our students come from 45 countries around the world. And a lot of our students are first generation students, meaning that they're first in their family to go to college. And they also come from underprivileged backgrounds. And so this is a place of opportunity where others are rejected, and elsewhere they're rejected. So I'll give one example. One of our alumna, Carol Wage, she had a career on Wall Street and then wanted to become an architect. And the only place that would accept her was Boston Architectural College, because she doesn't fit the traditional mold. She did not fit it. And she came here, she got her degree, and she started in the mailroom of Shepley Bulfinch as a student, and she became a CEO. So she just stepped down from the CEO role this past year. And that is a story that is fairly common in terms of how the opportunity is found through the educational model. And you've also talked about AI and robotics, Tanuja, and very quickly, that is, of course, my personal area of expertise. And the book that I co-edited came out 3 years ago, Towards Robotic Architecture, continues to be the only comprehensive book on robotics in architecture. And Boston, of course, is the capital of robotics and AI in the world. So we have an ecosystem. So we do collaborate with Autodesk. They have a technology center called BuildSpace. And so we collaborate with them to educate and to carry out a number of projects. And we look to how that transforms the education and the future of the world. So a lot of exciting things on that front. Look forward to talking more. Thank you.
Tanuja, you have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah, Rajiv, heading the oldest school of architecture in India, JJ, set up in 1913. Having recently celebrated the centenary year, share the challenges of a state-run legacy institute. Also, I think traditionally JJ School always had the privilege of the diversity of a student profile, which I think is currently compromised because you're looking at student enrollment criteria, which is slightly different. Does that impact the quality of education that the school has been known?
Sure, thank you. Am I audible to all?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would begin by thanking the organizers for letting me part of this wonderful panel of discussions. It is a great privilege to be here and taking ahead the ideas of Martha and Mahesh. I would just like to say that we are part of that school of architecture, which is an extension of an art school. An art school was established by the British in 1857 in this part of the city, when it became important for converting an artisan into an artist as a challenge. And there was this businessman called Sir Jamshedji Jijiboy, the first Indian to be knighted, who gave a lakh rupee donation to start this. with the condition that the first principal of the JJ School of Art would be a British, who was imported from the Royal College of Art, London. And that's how it all started. But by 1913, the Department of Architecture was established. And you had to learn all the subjects of art, design, while doing architecture. So we are indeed very privileged to be that school that was an extension of an art school. Second, we had a very clear mandate of having 4 verticals in an architecture school. One was the design vertical, where in the first year, second year, third year, and fourth year, okay, it was very clearly said, the first year will cover basic design, second year will cover interior design, third year would cover landscape design, and fourth year would cover urban design. They had some idea that they would cover the various aspects of design as per the scale. And the last year would be architecture design and design dissertation. So that would be the outcome of an architecture graduate. With this, there were 3 other parallels. One was construction technology and theory of structures, design of structures, which is engineering. And that, whatever you could imagine, you also ought to have built. And therefore, there was the parallel where construction technologists, structural engineers were invited as special teachers to fulfill the dreams of the artists through architecture design. The third vertical was practice and building bylaws, because Bombay being a city where Town Planning Act of 1915 was first started in the country. And therefore, the first building bylaw started happening in the Municipal Corporation of Bombay. And therefore, it was very important that all architects had to practice and follow a building bylaw. So practice became a very important part. And therefore, I think Mahesh covered it. After school was over in the afternoon, the students actually worked with architects' offices. And most of the practicing architects in the city of Bombay would actually teach at Sir JJ School of Architecture. So it was a great advantage. Students learned, earned, and found architecture learning an enjoyable process. And the fourth was apprenticeship. It was very important for every graduate to understand that though you did internship with an expert, you had to do 1 year or 2 years of apprenticeship to be able to get in to understand what is the real meaning of Art Deco buildings if you're working with an architect who is designing an Art Deco building. So I think we were very lucky to have been associated with such teachers who taught, and therefore a new kind of a graduate was designed that was coming out of Sir JJ School of Art and Architecture. This is the background of the school. Second thing, how has technology affected and had an impact? I think it has a great impact, wonderful thing to happen. Pandemic actually has been a boon. The students have become bolder. Now they express themselves online very boldly. I think they can now project their design ideas without fear, and they can communicate better. And I like the statement made by Martha, where she said that, teachers are also part of this phenomenon where they have begun to learn the online platform to be able to teach better, which was a little new for them, but I think it was worth it. But there is one thing I wanted all of you to know. Students are very happy as far as offline classes are concerned when they return, but they still want examinations to happen online because they feel when they're examined online, they will be able to perform better. This is what came out of the technology impact. And we are planning to come back with the offline session soon, in 2 weeks. And then we ought to know what will happen to the learning teaching method by then. So these are 2 cents of the dollar from my side.
Yeah. So, now we have Gita who's, working on the side where I think where the schools failed, probably, or maybe work parallelly. So I would like you to share what actually prompted you to start off something like ACSA, which is an online learning initiative. an outside the classroom learning module, which is extremely popular in the country for those of us who are teaching in various schools in the country. And also functioning in a large country like India with about 600 plus institutes, you are actually trying to bring the students under one umbrella, probably, even better than what NASA or any of those platforms do. So, and they're also trying to juggle their schedules to participate in whatever you have to offer. So just share some of your thoughts and how you kind of lure the students to, participate in that and bring out their best. Because as faculty, we are constantly struggling to get the best out of them through the term. So.
Thank you, Tanuja, for that question. And I'd like to thank the organizers for certainly having me as part of this super panel discussion. Yes, so the journey actually started with Ethos many years ago when it was started really as a response to a need to make available a platform where people could learn from each other, could share and grow, even if they're in contest with each other. And this is something that arose from a personal experience where I, took on this road by chance and not really by choice. So it would be nice to have, it's nice to also do these things by chance and decide whether it's working or not, and then moving on or continuing whichever way. But if you made informed choices, I thought it would be nice. And that's how Ethos happened. Along the journey of Ethos for the last 18, 19 years, one noticed large gaps in learning and mentoring between different locations and institutions owing to various reasons. So ACSA was conceptualized in a sense to bridge those gaps and to democratize learning in a sense, to create some kind of a platform, some kind of a level playing field, if possible, for students from different locations. So the field of architecture, construction, design, and engineering is, of course, undergoing significant transformations, and our learning also needs to keep pace with this change. There is a need for diverse set of skills in this industry, and very often, the way we teach focuses on honing a very similar and standard skill sets where all students are kind of coming out looking similar, being similar. While we live in a democracy, our education system is not really democratic. For instance, there are limited options for learners to have a say on the type of learning and even the pace of learning, for instance. So this was something that really prompted me to look at alternatives. And, starting from a very modest number of less than 40 colleges offering architecture and design as a discipline 3 decades ago, 108 when I started Ethos. We have a number closer to 500 today. Colleges are spread out in cities, towns across India, and even villages. And these give rise to problems of maybe unequal exposure, not only in terms of teaching, but infrastructure as well, but also in the realm of outside the classroom opportunities to learn. In my interactions, including with people like you, Tanuja, there were many of you who offered, who were willing to give of your time, but may not have had the ability to give structured time to colleges. And that's how, we thought, why not look at taking practice to colleges as well and fill in that gap. So I believe very strongly that explorations outside academics are also essential tools of learning. And I think that's something that we need to acknowledge. I think college education is also not often in sync with the developments in what's happening in our country, the changing scenario. We still have sometimes syllabi which is irrelevant, which makes students ill-prepared for real-life situations when they come out. And this is a lament of many people who take on architects as they graduate. While there are more than adequate number of graduating as professionals, again, there is a lack of readiness of employability, and also the industry is not ready to absorb the numbers that are actually coming out. So there's attrition that happens as well. So it's really to bridge these various gaps that ACSA was conceptualized, we have an online learning platform where students can learn at their pace to bolster their interests and their weaknesses as well. If they want to improve on their skills, they could look at that. We talked a little while ago about school students. So we've also been focusing on students understanding this space, school students understanding this space before they even make that first choice on whether they want to become architects. And hence, I think we get the right kind of students who are invested in this field from the beginning if they know what this field is about. So these are the various ways in which we hope to bridge some of these gaps and inculcate the joy of learning.
Yeah. No, actually, the discussion that preceded was really wonderful because it touched upon many points. One of the things that we are always kind of concerned about is when a student comes in, what is that criteria on the basis of which you take a student on? So starting with actually exposing the school students to what the softer skills are or what art and architecture does, to then helping them make a informed choice when they come into a career selection, I think is extremely critical. That also leads me to the next question, to Martha in particular, actually to all of you, now that we've got an initial introduction to what each of you are engaged with. How critical do you think it's to expose the students to the specificity of climate, material, culture, vis-a-vis the globalized response? Because, at the undergrad level, is it very critical to do that? Does that make the students who come out eventually as qualified graduates more resilient to working anywhere, to looking at any situations? I think.
No, it's a great question, and I think you're going right to the essence of what architecture design education is. It is understanding the context in which you are operating. And that context traditionally has been the climate, the place, the history, the culture, the social context. I think now, and that is fundamental. We have to support the value that architecture and design relate to a time and a place, and that we can learn a lot from the local setting. On the other hand, I think something like COVID has shown us that we are also very much connected. So I would say at my school, what we try to do is bridge those different layers. We basically focus with our students in the built environment, the natural environment, the digital environment, in terms of environments where they move. And then I would say also vertically, we look at from the very smallest scale to the largest scale. And the way we do this is, of course, probably as my colleagues do in their universities, research is very much important before students start any type of project or approximation. Synthesis, the continual criticism, going back and reevaluating. And I think next to all the skills, and we are in the polytechnic tradition, next to all the skills that we have to impart, probably the most profound one is critical thinking. So students need to understand the impact of their actions at the local, the individual scale to the global scale. And this is very hard because when you're a student, you don't really, it's very difficult to set priorities and articulate things, but this is our goal. So when we start at the bachelor level, of course, the first projects are more simple. We will leave one or two areas not defined. So students will have to then define them and explain them and give their arguments as to why they chose a certain path. And as they get closer to their final projects, the masters, the professional masters, then the definitions there are less and less definitions. There's much more in the hands of students. But if for these 5 or 6 years you've had a process of critical thinking, I think it supports our idea. There is not one path in architecture. As Gita said, the industries are changing, practice is changing, so I cannot prescribe to a student what they should do. But with the deep knowledge of the architecture discipline, along with this ability of critical thinking and evaluating impacts that architecture can cause, positive or negative, I think is the role that we as educators can support in our students.
And eventually, I guess, you've been on the board of many international awards, having met many masters. So hopefully all of these measures help a student realize their potential to the maximum. Yeah, I mean,
I hope so. And when we get to the masters, I would say that I think masters from the past inspire. They give us lots of great information. And now on a very personal and irreverent point of view, I hope we don't have masters in the future in the same way we did in the past. I hope we have much more collaborative approach, appreciation for the different roles in architecture, whether you are considered a master, the author, or whether you are someone else who has an important role within the whole process. So I'm looking forward to a change in the future, especially for my female colleagues.
yeah. Yeah, actually, architecture is a completely collaborative field. So some of the institutes like JJ, you mentioned your own school, being part of a larger group of art, architecture, and design schools, I think what you have to offer is far more holistic. And I think that is also with the new education policy, which is coming through in the country, we are looking at different kind of qualifying parameters where students can come in. And then are we looking at actually vertical and cross studios across various disciplines? I think, Rajiv, would you like to take this question, or Mahesh? Rajiv, you'll have to unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So is it okay if I go first, Mahesh? Or
Absolutely, please.
sorry. See, I was trying to tell you about the verticals, about the kind of verticals that we go through. There is a great possibility of horizontal mixing of subjects. We not only mix up a building technology subject with theory and design of structures related to structural engineering, but we also use structural engineering as a design force to be able to finalize a form in architecture. But I would like you to know that today we have been benefited by a new education policy, national education policy, which is actually promoting multidisciplinary approach towards thinking. So you can actually bring in subjects from the art school. You can also bring in subjects from the design school and generate an architecture student who is multiple talented and is also knowing photography as an art form, who's also knowing calligraphy as an art form, who can also communicate through drawings using painting and sculpture. So I suggest always, to our teachers that our new education policy, which is helping us follow multidisciplinary approach, we must take full advantage of it. To add to it, technology will play another big role. The new aspect of artificial intelligence, where you basically are trying to use BIM designed buildings on site, can also look forward to giving directions online to the site supervisor from your office. I think we should take full advantage of this technology improving over the time. And we are actually looking forward to such teachers who can come from industry. Most of them are our alumni who understand because they've gone through the process of learning in our college. And we find the time ahead very exciting. So not only multidisciplinary approach, but also something where the architect coming out is not only a graduate of architecture, but a new architect with multiple talents.
Having appreciation for all art forms, yeah.
Yeah.
So Mahesh, I have one regarding the concurrent education that you'll follow, is introducing them to actually practical training way early in their education system. Does that kind of in a way curb the creativity? Because then you're kind of molded into a certain manner of thinking. I know there are some schools, there is definitely an institute in Sri Lanka which follows this. We had NDARC in Delhi which followed it, and JJ School, etc. So what are your thoughts on it? I mean, this is just because as a student, you're supposed to be really having great dreams, right? Not being shackled by things which are buildable or otherwise. So how do you kind of?
Yeah, well, I think fundamentally, first to your previous question, Tanuja, that's an urgent question. And we are, as a world, this is not a time where we take these individually and or in a fragmented manner, and that we as a world have to take this up together, and that we fundamentally change our approach to education. And that is where I think, I am fortunate to be at the Boston Architectural College, where, as I said, the banyan tree model, which is we educate together. Education is not by any means the sole prerogative of education institutions. Education is something that society should do together, right? And that is one. And second, that somehow we assume that if we take the students and sequester them in a campus and somehow do something with them for 4 or 5 years, gosh, they are going to be extraordinary. I think it is quite the contrary, that we need life immersed and life integrated education. And that education fundamentally is about bringing out the best in the individuals and actualizing their potential, not necessarily training of the professionals. It comes later. It comes as a secondary subset. Why? Because we are at this juncture in the world with all the environmental social problems because of the choices we have made collectively as a civilization or civilizations and as individuals. And those are informed by who we are as individuals. How do we see ourselves, our relationship to the world? And that, I think, is fundamentally the call of education, no matter what education it is. And so that's the way we approach it. And we approach it as a partnership with everybody in the society, that we immerse them in the problems of the day. And that creativity is something we exercise every moment, that it is a way of being, right? It is not a special skill set or something you can hone it, but it is inherently very human. It's part of every individual, right? So that is the kind of approach to education and preparing certainly professionals who can be responsible, but are not limited to those professional persona and identities, that we are fundamentally part of the society, and we need to take that responsibility seriously. So I'll just say that, and I can give any number of examples in how it is done, but that is the most important thing to me.
Wonderful. Actually, Gita has also been kind of in her thing looking at, vertical. In a way, you don't have a barrier of, students only from a certain year participating in whatever programs that you have. So they are working together as a team. Each one of them bring something to the table. But the other question I also want to add to you, Gita, is some of the schools want to align their studio problems with whatever you have to offer in terms of the problem. So does that skew the kind of level playing field for the others?
So yeah, so let me just, I think the collaboration part will come when I just address what you've just asked me. So at ACED, we function really like an aggregator where we're bringing good mentors to curious learners across the world. And we've noticed three kinds of learning attitudes across age and experience brackets: the self-initiated, the silent listeners, and the late risers. The third are the ones who actually enroll into a course to use it and complete it at a later date. They hoard courses like books you may have on a shelf, but read them as and when they feel the need to. So there is also the situation that you're talking about where colleges enroll the whole class in a studio, and which could be collaborations. And I think that's extremely beautiful. We recently concluded a collaborative studio on healthcare, where we had 10 colleges from different parts of India, and the healthcare expert was actually sitting in Canada, Martin Fissé, and he spent close to 10 weeks and 5 hours in the final jury actually sitting and talking to students on design. So this had students from different years, like a particular college would have had maybe third year as a healthcare studio, while somebody else would have had maybe thesis students. All the healthcare thesis projects would have come together to attend this course. So there is, a great variety and a different kind of collaboration. We also had people who came and spoke on services and things like that. So it became a holistic approach to the problem of healthcare itself. As far as the unfair advantage to certain colleges, I think you mean that there you mean the competitions that we do where
Yes.
yeah, a particular college takes it as a studio project. I would say yes and no.
Because you have faculty who are kind of mentoring.
Yes.
And you have students who are by their own steam enrolling and, doing the projects on their own. So
yeah, so now what we've started doing is having a guided approach to competitions also. In fact, you were part of one of those discussions where we spoke on those 4 typologies last year. So we are also giving all the participants something to learn. We are also creating a little course that they can access and learn from. We are allowing students to upload their case studies, the participants to upload their case studies. So someone sitting in Delhi can actually study a case study of someone sitting in Chennai. So there is that kind of collaboration and learning as well. As far as faculty and that unfair advantage, there are disadvantages too. Sometimes faculty could curb that freedom of expression because they're looking at the whole class working in a particular direction. So there are advantages and disadvantages in both, and I think they kind of cancel each other out in a sense. It's up to the student eventually to finally dish out that design that they really think is the best and submit it.
Okay. Yeah, so from students' focus, I would like to actually take the whole focus a little bit onto the faculty also, because I think, like Mahesh mentioned, it's a collaborative responsibility when we talk about education. I think practitioners and faculty have equal responsibility to actually look at the quality of graduates who come out and the quality of education that the students get. But during actually, I guess with the advent of digital medium, it's just a click of a mouse that the information comes pouring in. So how do we actually make, as faculty, how is the faculty making themselves more relevant? How do they, obviously they have to redefine themselves, because traditionally what a classroom did has to be looked at, afresh, because now a lot of the information is available to students without having to really interact with that faculty. So what are the ways of actually bringing this critical pedagogy into the classroom? Martha?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Mahesh.
No.
Yeah, sure. It's for all of you. It's really a...
No, Mahesh, please start, because then I can respond to you. So please go ahead, Mahesh.
I'd also add a continuation to this question, Mahesh. What are the ways of also bringing accountability to the faculty? Because is a performance of a student the only criteria, or what are the other means? Because
great
that is
question.
also distorting the whole method of actually looking at faculty.
No, it's a wonderful questions. We can spend hours talking about it, no doubt. But let me just say that, faculty, when we talk about faculty, it is a role. And we have, for instance, last semester, 290 faculty members who have taught with us and worked with us for 650 students. And that is the kind of immersion or partnership and mentorship that is important. And when we say faculty who are involved in certain kinds of activity, right? It's teaching and creation of new knowledge or new works, and also serving the society, right? Those are the kinds of roles. And in the previous session also, there was some discussion about it. It is important that the idea of a faculty member is that they are immersed in a wide range of activities, not just one type of activity, and they're integrating them and bringing them to the learning environment, whatever that learning environment is, and wherever it is, for that matter. So I'll just say that the approach we take is that an engaged faculty member, engaged in the world, is the most fundamental thing, and that they're engaged with the student in being able to guide them, to inspire them, to challenge them, and to be there to show the direction when there is need for it, right? So that is how I would approach it. They're not isolated elements or individuals, right? These are integrated into the society and into the world. And that is, my vision would be, that is where we need to go. Accountability is an important question, because when you talk about learning, I suppose the educational institutions do have a certain responsibility for quality and learning outcomes. Right? When we say here is a degree or a credential, it should mean something, and that is the accountability of it. And so the systems of accountability are very important when it comes to that, at least in the West, mostly in the West, and definitely in the US. Accreditation is a huge part of it. Peer review, essentially it is peer review driven accreditation. And so it is our peers who tell us, yes, you are doing your job, yet your students are learning what they're supposed to learn, or they're doing well, not well, whatever the case. And that's one level of accountability. And the second level of accountability is within the institution, where there would be ways of peer review and development that need to happen. So I think when we look at and engage the individuals with respect to how to actualize their potential as faculty members, just as we expect students, and I call myself student number one. That's the reason I say that is that I am always in a learning mode. And that is what we need to bring to the table as a faculty member, as a, president in my case, or as a, whatever it is. And so it is much more permeable in terms of the identity that we need to take, rather than rigid identities and roles. And so it's more like a collage, as I would say, right? A college should be really more like a collage.
Yeah.
If I may just add, if you don't mind, Tanuja.
Yes, of course.
I think the faculty also needs to recognize that the body of students is also like a collage that Mahesh was talking about, and not bring them as an even color scheme. It would be so nice for them to acknowledge that there are so many different, and that sometimes does not happen in many places, and that's the unfortunate part. I think that's something, I don't know how one could evaluate, because that's an intangible skill.
Yeah, I think this question is really interesting, and I will try to approach it from maybe just a little different point of view, where the pain points are, perhaps. I'm a firm believer that our faculty are the backbone of the institution. Students come and go, and I love them, but faculty are the ones that are contributing to the ethos of the institution, its legacy and its future through their training. So for me, they are so important, and I'm so grateful to them. And we also have a large faculty body. because of the innovative nature of some of our programs, we have a lot of adjunct faculty who are working in different fields and have a love of education. So they come in for one subject or two subjects, things like that. But where are the pain points? I think the pain points in some institutions are the accreditation structures or the legal or the official guidelines that must be followed. Rather than look at the contribution of individuals or the outcomes, there are sometimes very strict norms. You need to have 70% with PhDs, and they must be full-time, and they cannot be doing other things. I also see in not so much in my university because we're private and we have more flexibility, but in some other institutions, to get a faculty position, you're voted in by your colleagues. Well, this has both sides to it. The positive that you know those colleagues, you can evaluate them in the peer review. It has the negative side because juries tend to feel more comfortable with people who are like them. So this is in some ways stifling the evolution. And then just one other thing that I can mention that is not a pain point, but it is very interesting and a cause for debate, are student surveys about faculty members and exit interviews about the different degree programs that we have. And I find these really interesting. I cannot say that students should be making decisions as to who is a faculty member. It is really, they come to us because of the different things that we can offer. And of course, when they're in the institution, they should choose and they should have things that respond to their individuality. But a student is not hiring a faculty member, except perhaps at the AA in London, but other than that. But I do think students' opinion is fascinating when they say this professor, this faculty member is difficult to understand, or when they say that they don't seem well organized, or they have difficulty understanding concepts. It gives to us clues, not always just about that individual faculty, but it gives us clues about other means we may implement to supplement the educational experience. So again, this goes back to the idea of collaboration. I think leadership, we have an incredibly difficult and exciting role to let faculty members know the overall values of a program or a school, and then allow them the freedom within those broad parameters to exercise their individuality as faculty members. And maybe that will also help to give this idea that students are individuals that Gita was mentioning. Thank you.
Rajiv, I think you have something to add to this, right? Because you're working with...
Yeah, you see, I think students are temporary teachers. Teachers are permanent students. Okay? Looking at all that we spoke to all of you. But you know, here, students are also creators of knowledge. While they work with their teachers, they are actually creating design solutions, design ideas, from where teachers also end up learning. It is just that the teacher should have an open mind and the love of teaching so that they together produce knowledge. And therefore, they add to the professional value or enrich the profession. I always remember some of my best teachers when I was studying architecture who helped me understand situations better and provide better architecture solutions. I don't forget them. But my teachers, whom I have not forgotten, have also not forgotten me. They also get in touch with me even today. So I think it all depends on a very nice, healthy relationship between a graduating architect and an architect who has already graduated. But meanwhile, I completely agree with Martha. The backbone of an educational institute is the dedicated faculty group of people who actually see to it that everything goes through well. You know? They look at all the requirements as per the data required to fulfill accreditation. They look forward to getting approvals. They look forward to see that the students find the right books in library to refer to. They look at every aspect of possible learning that if a student brings it to the notice of teacher, they make it happen. I think we should look forward to be able to work out an ability to find out able teachers. I think today we are not finding good teachers or people who find teaching very interesting coming to architecture schools. You know, this is what my problem is today in Bombay, where practice of architecture is full-fledged appreciated. It is very difficult. It's a challenge for me to find a practicing architect who can be a good teacher coming to teach in architecture school. You know, this is a biggest challenge for me. And I am actually looking forward to getting them, but they
Rajiv,
somehow don't.
I
Oh,
will
sorry.
send you names of some excellent people, but I will also say it's also our responsibility to help people develop as faculty members. Someone said in the last discussion, faculty tend to teach the way they were taught. The world is changing so
Yes,
quickly that
I
I
agree.
think we need to support faculty to allow them the space to evolve and to push them to evolve. But I will send you some names of fabulous people.
Great. I look forward to it.
You know,
Tanuja,
great.
if I may add one more thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share a story that as you know, faculty members are not them, it is us, and it is everybody is a learner. And so we just call learners in a learning environment. I'll share a story about we need to model how we expect students to approach learning. And you know, in one of the courses that I taught personally, I call it an inconvenience studio. I named it an inconvenience studio, where I gave no syllabus, no projects, no learning outcomes, no deadlines. And I challenged the students. I said, what are you here to do? What do you want to do? And I challenged them, said, okay, you first tell me what you believe in, how you think you're going to be serving the world. Pick one particular way you can do that. Organize yourselves. You form a startup. And you make a proposal about how you're going to realize it. And you produce the timelines, deliverables, everything along that. And then, you know, I'll fund you. I'm going to give you a seed fund of $1. Okay, and that is the seed fund. You shall not use your own money in the process of doing it. By the end of the semester, you'll have to realize whatever it is that you are setting out to do. Students have a breakdown in the first week of that particular challenge. Why? Because there is expectation that you'll be given everything on a platter, and suppose they just follow it and they get the grades and they get it done. But that is a kind of a modeling. And then I challenge them that you need to do something that I myself don't know. If I don't learn something new from this, then I will not have done my job as well. So we one semester we just did it with the tensile structures, and by the end of the semester they actually raised about $105,000, and they actually built them when we knew nothing about these, and I knew nothing about that at that point of time as to how to build them. And we all figured it out, and we engaged like 25 industry partners. Wonderful things happen when actually we challenge the status quo and model that learning. If I approach them saying, I am the sage, I am the expert, you're going to learn from me, that is the same attitude they will also exude. So I say it starts with us. Let's challenge ourselves and then model it.
Actually, for those students who are logged in here, I think it will be a great moment to hear all this from you, because I don't think they hear it very often at the studios, you know. So we are all learners and we're learning from each other constantly. And I think also talking about, you know, the innovative model that Mahesh spoke about. I just want to, I see that time is quickly running out. I have one question which I definitely want to ask all of you. We've not been able to go through a lot of the questions, but you know, architecture today is a very generalized stream. Do you think it's nice to be able to give the possibility for a larger number of students to enroll in a shorter, maybe 3-year course, which actually, you know, initiates you and, you know, introduces you into architecture, art, design, etc., because then you give them the possibility to pursue other alternate careers. I think, I mean, I personally believe that that would bring in a society of people who are far more sensitive and far more pliable, far more resilient to be able to take decisions, you know, to make a better environment. What are your thoughts on it? I mean, I really feel very strongly that, you know, it would be good to have all of your inputs on this. So like you have a BA, you know, you also have.
For sure, Tanuja, I think it'll be great. And I think the NEP kind of loves that as well.
Yeah, that's
the
right.
recent NEP.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could have a, like you said, a BA in architecture could be somebody who actually gets into what Apurva is, you know, crafted for herself as a career. While if you do maybe a BSc in architecture, I'm just throwing things here, you could probably end up being someone who's who works on site and, you know, looks at those aspects of architecture. And while if you do a B.Tech, then you probably become you know, the structural side of architecture is what you're looking at. Or if you take on B.Arch, then of course you have the entire gamut open to you. So there are so many, and there could be many more like that happen. So I think it's great to have that possibility at the end of 3 years for you to decide which direction you have to take. Otherwise, you probably are stuck in a profession that you are not happy with and the profession's not happy with.
Yeah, because, you know, when students come to the final year and they've realized already in the 3rd year that
it's not for you,
not what they want to pursue, then
and
it's
we know so many
for
of them, right, who end up in Google and Facebook and doing things, and after a fabulous course in a fabulous institute, because they felt that
Mata and Mahesh probably do not have these, you know,
these issues to deal
challenges to deal with. Because
sure, let me just say that design literacy is one part of our mission and vision. Is that it's not just that we are preparing students for professions, but rather we are preparing the world for what is to come. And that design literacy is an important part of society as a whole. And so in that sense, I think all of us are probably unified in that notion. We need to be able to play a role in advancing design literacy. And whether they come into the professions or not, they're always part of the world, utilizing that knowledge and skill set to see the world differently and engage in it differently. And that, I think, is what we can and should do. And we have programs that we do, not just the degree programs, because I think we cannot assume students as 18 to 24-year-old monolithic, right? Student just means learners at any stage of life, and that they would want to engage in some formal education at some point of time, and that we need to provide for that. So that, I think, is what will help in doing that.
Tanuja, I think that what you brought up is something that has very positive possibilities. If people did a shorter course in architecture, it would also address part of this problem that society doesn't really know what architects and designers do. I always think that you go to the dentist once or twice a year, so we all know what a dentist is, but we don't really go to an architect once or twice a year. So one way to approach it is having shorter courses, is providing opportunities. a second way to do it, and which is what we have selected at my institution, is because it's very hard to set up a 3-year bachelor because of the European Union requirements, the laws, our ministry laws. It's very hard to do that in Spain. So what we try to do is within the bachelor in architecture, in architectural studies, which is 5 years, and within the bachelor in design, which is design, it's not leading to a professional architecture degree, is impart the idea to our students that these degrees open many doors. There is not one way to practice architecture. There is not one model of what the architect is. It's evolving. And I like to always comment that architecture and design are fields that are so special in the world. And I think you were alluding to it. Science sees the world as it is. Doctors and lawyers want to reestablish a previous state or create a stable state. The only professions that imagine an unknown future, which is better than today, are architecture and design. So I think that we try to tell our students, and more than 50% do not want to be design architects opening their own firm. More than 50% want to understand, some want to go into other firms, some want to go into companies, some in museums, some want to be sustainability specialists, some want to be strategic designers for industry, some want to go into construction management or new industrialized building components. So I think we can approach it both ways, from within and from without.
So the education system really has to give that introduction to the students that you're actually able to pursue. Everybody is not a designer, but being able to kind of do many other things, but do a lot more sensitively. Yeah, Rajiv, you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this opportunity of exit policy is actually being practiced at Punjab University. There were some students from Chandigarh College of Architecture, which due to their part of exit policy, completed their studies until 3rd year, but they did not get BArch. They got BSc in architecture. So one of the students who did BSc in architecture ended up giving an entrance exam for MBA, and now he is part of some corporate industry doing something else other than architecture. But there were other students who did BSc in architecture who are now working on energy efficient building design. They are just here to come out with theories. They work with Terry in Delhi, and they're working on things like this. I think exit policy and opportunities for students while doing architecture will also help them take decisions whether they want to become an architect, and which I think is very important. Some would not like to pursue architecture at all. Some would just do interior design. So why would you spend 2 more years studying practicing of architecture? So I think this,
Rajiv, that's because it tips the whole economic model that the school,
which is not right for the student, So
absolutely.
So I think Council of Architecture is working on it, and this is in tandem to national education policy, where students now will be getting this opportunity of utilizing the exit policy. It works very well for government colleges, where some of our students have also left after 3 years and done MBA at IIM Calcutta, and they're very happy about it. They started with architecture, but ended up as corporate managers somewhere else. The biggest challenge in IIT Roorkee today, I speak to one of the teachers, he said, students of architecture are learning softwares like Python, Java. And when I asked the teacher why, he said, no, when it comes to placements, the maximum earning that a placement officer tells student is that if you knew Python and Java, you would get more returns. Okay, so architecture students are pursuing softwares to go into software industry. And there is a great challenge in Department of Architecture at IIT Roorkee how to tell students of architecture become architects. This is also good.
Yeah.
It is
IIT
as bad as
Roorkee is a
that.
different story. So I think,
Yeah.
I have first-hand experience
Yeah.
there. So
With
I think
others,
it's a
yeah.
different, but anyway, so I guess, yeah, that is what it is. So when you are qualifying for IIT entrance exam, then you are joining architecture, which IIT offers, just because you want to be an IIT graduate. It's not
That's
because you
right.
want to be an architect. That's the difference. Anyway, so the other question that I actually have, schools of designs are mushrooming all over. So it's now become like a commercial venture, really. How do you think the priority should be set for the education system? It was also mentioned by someone earlier, teaching someone to teach themselves. So how do you make the students lifelong learners, coping, resilient designers with a holistic approach and all of that? So how do you actually bring out an all-rounded personality? Because we don't have time to go into the continuing professional development program, which I assume a lot of the practitioners would have also pursued through the last 20 months, where a lot of digital platforms were available. We actually managed to hear wonderful designers. So I'm not really going into that because I think we're running short of time, but I would just look at it as the conservative education system. How are we actually looking at creating? This is the last but one question, but quick answer. And the last question is just a one sentence.
Yeah, Tanuja, I think I'll just quickly get us started and say we need to model what we expect our students to do. And it's not just what I say that they should do, but rather what I do is actually what is more authentic. So pursuing education lifelong and showing actually that I do. And I have education in architecture, urban design, and a doctorate in higher education management. I have business education, executive education. I do that all the time. And that, when people see that, that is authentic. When I say something, then people will say, oh yeah, of course, that's what you do. And that inspires me as well. So that is the engagement I expect that all of us to do.
Martha?
Yes, I think in a sentence, by example. And by example of our faculty, our leadership, bringing in outside voices to the academic setting, by tackling problems jointly with students that we don't have the answer for, showing them that we are not in possession of the truth and they are recipients, but in everything we do, approach it with that spirit of discovery. And I think example is a really powerful tool that we can use in education.
Gita, Rajiv?
So many think that learning is a process. I think learning is really an attitude. Designers are always curious, always looking for something better, something more beautiful, something more efficient, always inspired. And that attitude of, finding that something that's better makes us lifelong learners. We may not always learn from formal systems, but from life, from experiences, from colleagues. So really we are learning all the time, and the world is our teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, I would consider involving communities who could actually give us ideas. So community participation is through which we learn, because a city is ultimately a place which helps you decide what you want to become. So as designers, if you want to help find solutions and keep on learning and give a good quality of life to people, it's better to interact more with people and learn through them and provide appropriate design solutions.
Just the last question. I know Apurva is probably getting a little running out of time. So just in a sentence, what is the new age education mantra that you would advocate?
More opportunities to learn through technology applications. I mean, this is what I thought
Mahesh?
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that education should have no boundaries, and that education is something that we are all trying to do, leading the best out of ourselves, and that we do so and inspire each other, and that we use the means that are necessary in order to be able to serve the world above ourselves.
Gita?
At the expense of repeating myself, learning is an attitude, is what I would say.
I would say pragmatism and optimism. Pragmatism to be in touch with our reality, our communities through outreach, and optimism because I think we're at a time like no time in history when the global challenges are enormous and we don't have the answers. We have to find them together. And I think, as was said in different panels, the role of architects and designers in this is paramount. So I think we have a huge opportunity to contribute and research knowledge, create new knowledge, and do it on a global scale through technology and other means.
Thank you. Apurva, would you like to, are there any questions? Would you like to take any?
Thank you. Firstly, I must say it's been a privilege to hear all of you. There are some excellent comments that we've already received on Zoom and on the other platforms. I remember reading this somewhere that the problem with education is not about people being uneducated. The problem is that people are educated just enough to realize what they have been taught and not educated enough to question what they have been taught. So I think your panel today kind of questioned aspects of what architectural design education could be, should be, or aspire to be. And I think you all spoke about sweeping changes in the pedagogy that you have all incorporated in your teaching methods. And I think there is so much to learn. And I know that perhaps the discussion on architectural education can never be over, can never be enough. But I have to thank you for so many pointers. And we have had many students who have joined us during the discussion on Zoom and on other platforms. And in fact, we also have a special panel which we are going to have for the students in the evening. Rajiv sir, I must say, I loved what you said, that students are temporary teachers, but teachers are temporary students. And I think that would probably be the gist of this entire panel. There were a couple of questions that we received from the students, but I think the last pointers that you all gave, they have kind of covered everything. There is one quick question here in the chat box that I see right now. So I'm going to be taking it up. Okay, just a second. There was this one question.
Rajiv sir answered it, I think.
Oh, he's already answered it? Okay.
No, yeah, I just said yes, but I thought we don't have time, so I didn't want the time.
If you would like to elaborate, I'll just repeat the questions for attendees. So it was from Vivek, who asked, we see a lot of students graduating with very little experimentation in terms of new materials, new processes, which are efficient and need of the hour in the fast-paced world. So are the institutes up to the challenge to introduce these new ideas? So Rajiv sir, would you like to answer now?
Yes, I think the institutions are looking forward to introducing such challenges and they need support. I think it is only at institute that can cause change and bring change. And therefore institutes are now ready thanks to pandemic. And that is why I always say pandemic has been a great boon. All those teachers who otherwise would have never used online mode of teaching are now looking forward to using it well, and they look forward to it. It has advantages as well as disadvantages, but I think it has made both teachers as well as students bold about it. Earlier, when the teachers were taking offline classes, they were only being observed by students and few other colleagues. But now when they are talking to the class, the students' parents, the entire world is watching them. And now their lectures are being recorded, So now the teacher is more conscious about their teaching. Some teachers were told that try to improve. You are very good, but try to become better. And I think it has helped. I'm telling you very well. So Martha, I take your point. We should help our teachers to become better. We are trying to do that. And we feel this hybrid mode of teaching learning is going to be very well utilized, and it is here to stay. So I think we are all ready for new challenges.
Yeah,
Is that what I meant?
Purva, with your permission, yeah. So, we have the new education policy coming up that allows you to choose your electives apart from the traditional architecture subjects and electives. Do we need a change in the curriculum of architecture itself and design? Do we need a change in that?
Of course.
Yeah, so what would you like to see change?
Mr. Vanwari, actually, I strongly believe India is too vast a country to have one curriculum.
The flexibility.
It's time that we actually looked at, specificity to each of the regions and at least incorporated that. So one curriculum across the country will definitely not work. The second thing that I also want to mention here is that reducing an architecture program to a 4-year course is not going to make any better graduates, because this is answering the previous question which was asked. Because for you to be made more employable, or for you to be a lifelong learner, you have to engage for a prolonged period of time. And that is why the exit policy is actually important, because only the ones who are really engaged and want to be involved in this design world will then continue and pursue the various areas of specialization.
Yeah, Anil, I think a great question. Let me just quickly say that, of course, this question is specific to India, but is applicable everywhere. And that is, curriculum actually comes from ruts of a chariot. And I always approach curriculum with trepidation, that we are not here to create a rut in which students run their wheels, but rather that culture, institutional culture, is what allows for experimentation, pursuit of life, and really bringing out the best from oneself. Creating the space is much more important than creating a rut. Curriculum, you're absolutely right, if it is overstructured, overly prescriptive, and in fact top-down, as Tanuja just pointed out, for the entire country, is counterproductive. And so I think the new education policy certainly opens that up. And here in the US, we have been enjoying that all along, that the faculty have the freedom to be able to craft the curricula and pedagogy and syllabi to create the space, right? So it's more guidelines rather than
in Boston, you have a long pedigree. In India, do we have enough qualified educationists and academicians to create that curriculum in architecture? That's one. Regional specific. Rajiv is experienced in this area, Tanuja maybe. But do we have enough people who are, to provide what industry needs? Like he said, Python is what people are looking at because it's better paying. So what is needed? What should the curriculum be regionally? Any thoughts on that?
But it seems to me that the question is not a list of subjects, but it seems to me as what is the essence of architecture and design? What will remain of this profession no matter what changes in the world? And I think it has to do with the design process. I think it has to do with dealing with the built, the natural, and the digital environments, where we're not dealing with the hand, we're not dealing with papers. We may be, but we're also dealing with other things. And I think that we have to look at, if I can make a parallel to city planning. In the past, we drew roads and sidewalks and plots for buildings. Nowadays, we are asking the city to be responsive. We are asking our master plans to look at performance more than physical lines on a plan. I think architectural education has to do the same. Rather than a list of subjects or computer programs that someone should learn, we know that's going to change. But how do you approach space, building, construction? What you have to look at, and it doesn't matter if you are in India, in Europe, or in Boston, you have to understand that framework, and you have to look for the rules of that framework, and then you have to make your projects perform a certain way and be responsible for that performance. So I think I'm not trying to hedge the question, but I get nervous when people talk about, should we look at concrete or bricks, or should we look at mushrooms as a building material? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Going forward with Mark Zuckerberg creating the metaverse, you'll require architects in the metaverse. You'll require planners in the metaverse. The world's going to be different, and property in the metaverse is going to be very expensive. Sometimes it could run into millions of dollars.
Well,
I think universe. I don't know about metaverse, but the universe is certainly waiting.
Yes,
for some responsibility to be taken. So,
but Anil, answering your question also, there are enough people who are competent to actually put a curriculum together. And today, with the world being much smaller than what we perceived it to be, I think there are possibilities of actually using the expertise of people from across the globe.
Cross-disciplinary also. I don't think it's about regional curriculum being developed in that manner, which will again become restrictive. I think it's about having a framework with enough flexibility where each college has its own, individuality and identity that it adds to that curriculum and brings about based on what they're handling, what the context of their where they are set is. And I think that's the beauty of having that flexibility.
I'm going to ask two follow-ups, and I hope Apurva doesn't mind my taking time. So is there enough response going to come forward to what are suggesting now? And thirdly, what is it going to do to the cost of education, of architectural education? These are two follow-up. And will that deter if the costs do go up?
I would say we have to flip the question. What is the cost to society if we if we are not educating good architects?
I get that. But that's philosophical. That's not practical.
Priceless. I would have.
Why would the price go up? I'm not very clear.
No, also we are talking about India, where there is, we have architectural education which is being given at a pittance. The government colleges which are offering education are charging really minimal. And you have private institutes which are charging whatever, and yet we have students which are catering to both. So I don't think that's really
There was a stage when management education was 6 lakhs rupees a year. Today it is running probably into 50, 60 lakhs. It's almost as expensive as American education.
Yeah, Anil, no doubt. Cost is an important factor, without a doubt, because that is access to education. And not only the privileged should get access to this education. And I think you're absolutely right. The institutions should keep that in mind as they create new things. But I think creating flexibility will actually bring down the cost, not increase it necessarily. Yes. And opening it up to network, as India is planning to do, breaking the shackles of colonial educational model. Finally, right, the British education model of hub and spoke system being broken into a network system will allow people to be able to access education across the network.
And I believe many more people should use your no curriculum driven subject or project or model or whatever you talked about. I think that's a great idea. Let the students decide that. And the objectives and the outcomes, let the students decide that also. That will be great to bring about a lot of free thinking amongst architecture students.
So that will be Mahesh's inconvenient studio.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, and I think Rajiv should put that into practice in JJ. Have one subject which has nothing, no offense meant to anyone. Thank you, and thank you for tolerating me, all of you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful panelists, Martha, Mahesh, Gita, and Rajiv. I thoroughly enjoyed the session itself as well as the interaction prior to it. And thank you so very much, Mr. Vanwari, for this amazing thing. And I really hope you're able to take it into a physical mode the coming year and it becomes a discourse which is meaningful and we are able to take it forward. Thank you, Apurva.
We need your support. The whole the whole, what do you call it? The profession. What do you call this architecture? Do you call it a profession? Do you call it a life ambition? What do you call it? I mean, I'd like to call it.
It's a profession, it's a way of living.
Yeah. So I hope we get support, and we hope we can make an impact in this beautiful craft, I would call it also. Thank you.
I would just say probably a closing sentence that I know that being a teacher or an educator is a blessing. That is something that I have also realized in the past 1 year. But I think more than that, we are all blessed to have educators like all of you to guide us. So thank you, panelists, for your wonderful thoughts. This has been a wonderful discussion, and we hope we can take all these conversations further. Thank you. And Parth, you'd like to take it out over from here?
Sure. Thank you, Apurva, and thank you.
Tanuja.
Thanks to all the panelists for this lovely, lovely interaction. I think I can already see the longing to discuss more. So we should already have another session sometime later. Thank you, Anil sir, for such wonderful questions, especially about that metaverse question. I think that really has made us, given us a pause to ponder. We are
Parth, can I say something, Parth? Sorry.
Sure.
No, I just wanted you to understand that architects are people who understand what others only know about. So
Yeah.
I think we are an understanding community, and we can understand things better than other designers, you know. So architects are people who basically bring change in society, and they're agents of social change to give quality of good human life in all cities, you know. So Anil, I would say architects are different professionals, different than engineers, and they should be helped, encouraged to cause change in society.
No, that
is what I would do.
All I wanted to say, Rajiv, that's why we put together ADM. I wanted to bring about, like Martha's stirring the pot. I wanted to stir the pot, to stir this industry and make it get up, because it's too inward looking.